Hey everyone, welcome to my installation video for the Jetcoat Reflections Shower Wall Panel System from Craft+Main. I decided to make this video because there wasn't much content online for the Jetcoat products in general, and for the Reflection series there wasn't anything at all, even from Craft+Main. So what I did was I wore a GoPro camera during our installation of the shower panels in hopes that this video would help other people who are considering this product or already installing it. We found the Jetcoat shower wall products when we were looking at the Lowe's store, but we didn't find the Reflection series until we went to the Craft+Main website. I gathered that this is the newest Jetcoat product. Lowe's wasn't able to special order it for us, but luckily Menards was able to get it. You can download all the product documents on Menards' website. We chose the Stone Sierra style. Part of the reason we chose the Reflection series is the panels go all the way to the ceiling, and that's something that we liked. There's plenty of other better videos out there that show how to do good prep work, so I'm just going to glaze over what we did to get ready for the shower panels. Our old shower was a fiberglass tub and shower combination, and it was very old. The space was 60 by 32 by 96 inches. We took it all the way down to the studs and floor joists. And we also replaced the ends of the water supply lines and the drain pipes. We added some floor joists where it was necessary for extra support, and then installed 3/4 inch water repellent subfloor with HardieBacker Hydro Defense 1/2 inch board on top of that, and then that got a few layers of waterproof membrane for good measure. A lot of work had to be done with the studs to get them plumb, level, and square. And if you're going to be doing any kind of shower panel installation, this is a very important step and you can't overlook it. In the end, we got everything pretty close, even if it wasn't perfect. For the shower base, we used a Flexstone brand 60 by 32 white base because we liked that it maximized the floor space and also didn't require a mortar bed. You just install it directly onto your subfloor. We chose Go Board for the backer board walls because they're 100% waterproof when you use their sealants and other products, and they're also very light and easy to work with. Once the Go Board was set up on the walls and ceiling, we added a sheet of Plastex Polywall for the ceiling since it matched the shower base pretty close. With everything ready, we cleaned and vacuumed the work area. We also used a laser level from Amazon for this project, and that came in very handy for establishing a plumb line. I didn't get any good footage of unboxing, but the Jetcoat Reflections panels all come in one very heavy box. I'd seen online that Jetcoat panels can be brittle, so we were very careful when bringing the box home and also moving the individual panels when we were working. You just don't want to let them flex. But since the Reflections panels run horizontally instead of vertically, there's much less chance of breaking them accidentally along the grout lines. You'll start with the 60-inch wall. The first thing you have to do is cut off the tongue groove track on the bottom of the first panel. A circular saw with a 60-tooth blade worked the best for making most of the cuts on the panels. You can then use a sanding block to help clean up the edges, but I later found out that using a multi-tool with a sanding head is a lot more efficient, so I definitely recommend that. It just works a lot faster and it does a really good job. Then I used the center grout line and a drywall square to draw the plumb line on the back of the panel. We measured from the plumb line to each corner where a panel would be installed. This helps you to make your cuts to account for any variation in the width as you move up the wall. We made our 4 measurement marks, drew a line, and cut the excess off each side. We test fit the panel, and then it's time to add the included adhesive tape. We put 3 rows of tape on all the back wall panels. Pulling the backing off the tape can be a pain because it tears very easily. So we found that the best way to do it was to run your finger in front of the backing as you pull it off the tape. This will help adhere the tape to the panel and keep the paper from tearing. Then it's time to add the adhesive. I recommend a powered caulk gun. We got one for pretty cheap on Amazon. We used Liquid Nails Fuse-It construction adhesive, and I called both the Jetcoat and the Go Board people for that recommendation. Just make sure you choose an adhesive that works well with your backing board. You're going to put the adhesive on in circles, and that's because they kind of act like a suction cup when you press them up against the wall. Unfortunately, I didn't get footage of us installing the bottom panel, so what you see now is me adding a thin bead of Flex Seal clear drying silicone to the tongue and groove for the second panel. While the Jetcoat system is supposed to be waterproof, I figured this couldn't hurt. You'll bring the panel in at an angle, connect the tongue and groove, and then press it firmly against the wall. You want to make sure your panels are fully connected before you press the panel to the wall. You can kind of feel them click into place.
Okay, press.
Now you're going to want to use a rubber mallet to tap softly around the panel and make sure there's no gaps, but don't tap too hard on the grout lines. If any adhesive or silicone ends up on the finished side, you can wipe most of it off and then use 91% rubbing alcohol on a paper towel to clean up any residue. So while you watch us test fit and prep the next panel for installation, I'll use this time to mention a few tips in the process that really helped us out. You can use a Sharpie or pencil to mark on the back side of the shower panels. Both work really well. The process is basically the same for each panel. You measure the wall to your plumb line for each corner of the panel. Cut off your excess, test fit the panel, and then add your tape and adhesive and hang it. When you're taping, push down on the tape always in the same direction, otherwise it can come unstuck from the panel. I recommend you take the backing off the tape as soon as you get it on there, before you apply your adhesive. It's one part of the job that can easily be forgotten, and you're more likely to get adhesive on your hands when trying to take the backing off. You might notice we are using a little bit of Go Board adhesive too. This was left over from our earlier part of the installation, and I thought it would really help the panels adhere to the Go Board well if we used it in a couple spots. Also, I recommend carrying and moving the panels vertically. This will keep the panel from bending or bowing under its own weight, and it should help you to avoid accidentally breaking one. When attaching the tongue and groove, make sure they're fully interlocked all the way across. A gap in the connecting point will make the system not waterproof, and it'll ruin the panels being level horizontally. Use a laser level if you can. It really helps you maintain your plumb line, and it helps keep your grout lines looking perfect.
But it's supposed to dry clear, so but we were fucking right on mine.
Once the first 3 panels are in, it was time for us to put the trim piece in. The trim panels come in their own smaller box inside the larger one. The process on this is the same as other panels. The only big difference is you just use one strip of adhesive tape. I should probably take this time to mention something about the adhesive tape. It's really only used to help the panel stick to the wall while the adhesive cures. It also leaves a necessary gap between your backer board and the shower panel, so the adhesive doesn't get squished too thin to be effective. Something to mention about the adhesive, don't let your circles get too close to the edge. You don't want adhesive to come out of the edges of the panel. However, I found that the liquid nails adhesive didn't spread too much, and it actually was very easy to work with. You will go through a lot of bottles, so I'd recommend buying extra and then just returning the ones you don't use.
Press it really couldn't hurt, and it doesn't make it, it doesn't do anything bad to it.
With the trim panel in, it's time to install the top panel. I recommend taking vertical measurements in 3 or 4 places, in addition to your horizontal measurements. It's not uncommon for shower ceilings to not be perfectly straight all the way across, and I wanted the top panel to fit against the ceiling of the shower all the way across. We also had a digital tape measure with a laser, and that helped us in a few instances. I will say that the drywall T-square worked really well for making all the various marks, and I'd recommend it over a normal metal framing square. You could also use an aluminum straight edge, such as one for circular saws or other straight edge cutting. We made sure to sand the top edge of the shower panel so that it was smooth for installation. Don't be discouraged if you have to test fit each panel a few times before you get it just right. You definitely don't want any of the panels to be too short. And this is another reason I'd recommend the multi-tool for sanding, because you can have much more control over how much material you're removing compared to the saw blade. Here's another tip. An air compressor works great for blowing away the chips and dust created from cutting and sanding the panels. While we continue working, I'll take this time to mention that you should make sure to cover your shower base with cardboard, styrofoam, or something else to protect it from debris and accidental drops. The last thing you want to happen is to ruin your brand new shower base in the process of working. Here's a general planning tip when you're making a new shower. Measure the location of your studs for shower shelves, benches, doors, or anything else you'll be attaching later on. You can then refer to these measurements later to make sure you're drilling into studs for those items. The shower panels on the go board are not strong enough structurally to support heavy items like benches and shelves.
Alright Mom, one wall is done.
With the long wall completed, we moved on to the right wall of the shower without the fixtures. We had to cut around our Flexstone shower base curb, and unfortunately I ran out of footage space during this process, so I'll just have to describe it to you as you watch us do the sidewall. We started by cutting off the tongue on the bottom panel, and then we worked on getting the curb cut out. And we did a lot of test fitting, cutting, and resanding to get it to fit right. Once we had it perfect, we made sure to trace the cut onto a piece of paper so we'd have it for the other side when the time came. For these smaller cuts, I used a jigsaw with a blade made for plastic, and that worked very, very well. We used a piece of 2x4 and sandpaper to radius the edges to match the template. The Jetcoat instructions say to cut the excess from the inside edge, but we knew we'd be covering the outside corners with PVC corner trim. So instead, we always cut our excess off the outside edge. We only cut as much as we needed to off the inside of each panel to correct for the wall not being perfectly straight in every place. You can use a 2-foot level to help you visualize how much you'll need to cut off or at what angle. In our case, we usually only cut off around 1/4 inch or so. And we like the look of the grout transition on the inside corner better when we left it just factory. The Jetcoat Reflections shower panels are made to be 36 inches deep, so for our 32-inch shower, we knew we'd be cutting off 4 inches. The process for the panels themselves was the same as we went up the wall. We started by cutting the inside edge when necessary to be the tightest fit possible. And then we would slide the panel into the groove, scribe the back side of the panel on the outside corner, and then we would cut along that line. Once the panel test fit perfectly, we then added 2 rows of adhesive tape instead of 3. I'm pretty sure the kit comes with enough tape to do 3 rows, but we didn't want to risk running out, so that's why we reduced it to 2. If there's any gaps where the long wall panels meet the corners, I'd suggest filling those gaps in with silicone before you start putting up the side panels. I just ran a small bead in the few places there were some small gaps, and I used a silicone shaping tool to scrape off the excess so that the silicone was flush with the back wall panels. Once you get into your groove, the sidewall panels go up pretty fast. We only had to make cut adjustments on the inside edges of the 2 bottom panels. The rest were square. You also want to make sure that your grout lines are matching up as you install the panels from the sidewalls. Our laser level helped us with that, and this is why test fitting is such an important part of the process. You can make all the small adjustments you need to so that the end result looks flawless. I will mention that the factory edges of the sidewall panels have a kind of beveled edge to them. In our case, we knew we'd be covering that edge with trim, but your shower project might be different. This is why the Jetcoat instructions say to cut the excess off the inside edge. My point is, if your project doesn't plan to use trim on the outside edges, you can rest assured that the Jetcoat shower panels have a nice look on the edges from the factory. Another thing that we used on this project that made marking, cutting, and sanding very easy was a working surface on top of 2 sawhorses. 2 2x4s connected the sawhorses to create the base, and then we had a piece of 1-inch styrofoam insulation on top of that. The styrofoam works great because you can cut it with the circular saw or other blade and it won't damage the sawhorses. It just helps as a layer between the sawhorses and whatever else you're cutting. You can use some kind of panel board as well. I just like the styrofoam because it doesn't add resistance on the blade when you cut into it. We did the same thing on the top panel that we did for the back wall. We took vertical measurements in 3 places, and then we made our cuts based on those measurements. Once the panel fit snug vertically, we cut the excess off the outside edge and put the panel up permanently. While the middle panels tend to go up a little quicker, you want to make sure you take extra time and care with both the top panels as well as the bottom panels on each wall. Your bottom panel is your foundation, and any mistakes you make installing it will just become more apparent as you move on to the higher panels. Use a 2-foot or 4-foot level along with your laser level to check the top edge of your bottom panel when you're test fitting and after you've adhered it to the wall. The top panel is also important as it completes the look of each wall. In our case, the sheet of polywall in the ceiling is only attached with construction adhesive. The polywall covered the ceiling completely, all the way to the corners of the go board. So our shower panels help keep those edges in place and push tightly to the go board on the ceiling. This is why it's important to adjust the height of the top panels so that they follow the contours of whatever your ceiling material is. It also helps ensure water vapors and moisture doesn't make its way under there in the future. We've got a little time while we continue working, so I'll mention a few things I forgot to say about installing the very bottom panels on each wall. You want to be sure that you get the panels all the way down to the bottom surface of the shower base, but there needs to be enough of a gap for you to put a good bead of silicone later on to seal it. Our shower base had a natural curve to it built in to drain water, and this resulted in the gap being a little larger in the center than it was on the sides. But even at its largest, the gap was only about 1/8 of an inch. This was enough of a gap for the silicone to flow in and really get a solid hold, but not so large that it couldn't be filled with a normal bead. Just make sure there's enough so that it fills the space between the nailing flange and the back of the shower panel. Now it was time to move on to the left panel with our shower fixtures. We used the same process, first cutting the inside edge to adjust for the wall not being perfectly straight. Then we cut out our shower curb using the tracing we had made earlier. Our tub spout came out right at the top of the panel, so we used a Dremel sanding drum bit to carve out space for the bottom of the tub spout. Something else to consider is there may be a small gap between the shower base nailing flange and the bottom of the back of the Jetcoat panels. This would happen if your backer boards come out a little bit farther than the nailing flange of the shower base. In our case, the gap wasn't large enough to worry about, but if you're worried about that dead space, you can use silicone to fill that gap all the way across before you adhere the panel to the wall. The second panel included the shower valve knobs, so we took measurements both vertically and horizontally to account for those.
Okay.
Then we adjusted the inside corner edge of the panel to be tight and also used the Dremel for the top part of the tub spout. Once everything fit perfectly, we scribed our outside edge and we cut off the excess. We made our marks on the back side of the panel for the shower knobs, being as close and accurate as we could. We drilled pilot holes based on our measurements, and then we brought the panel inside to test fit and see how close we were. We marked where the tips of the knobs needed to come through, and then we just bored out the pilot holes using a Dremel and a side cutting bit. Finally, we test fit the panel, and we were able to get the tips of the knobs to pop through the holes. We just started making marks with a pencil for the outside edges of where the knob posts would be. The drum sanding bit on the Dremel worked perfectly for us. It takes off plenty of material, but it gives you all the control you need, and the end result is a very clean looking hole. We then bored out the holes little by little using a drum sanding bit until we were able to put the panel fully into place.
We got them. Okay, cool. And I don't need to take off a lot.
Once it fit perfect, we made our scribe marks and cut the outside edge. Take as much extra time as you need to when you're working with any panels that have shower fixtures on them. You don't want to make any holes in the wrong place. I think it's best for fixture holes to only be as large as they need to be and to be clean on the edges. So that's why we started small and took our time, making the holes bigger and in the right locations as we went along.
I think I'm in.
The next few panels were pretty easy. We only had to make minor adjustments to the inside corners using a multi-tool sanding head. Then we scribed and cut off our excess and moved along. When you cut the Jetcoat shower panels with a circular saw or a jigsaw, it sends a lot of tiny shards of plastic flying everywhere. Make sure you use eye protection when cutting. We didn't really have any luck trying to use the vacuum ports on the circular saw, and it made the tool more cumbersome and harder to control. The air compressor worked the best to clear out debris as we went along. As we get closer to finishing up, I think I should mention to make sure to keep one hand on the bottom of the panel whenever you're carrying it from one place to another. This is especially true after you've applied your adhesive to the panel. It could be very easy for one of the panels to slip out of your grip if you're only holding it from the top edge, and a hand on the bottom will ensure you don't drop one of the panels and damage it or damage your shower base. A chipped corner would really make for a problem. However, I have heard that Craft+Main will sell individual replacement panels if you contact them. Although mistakes do happen, taking extra care will ensure you don't have to put your project on hold while you wait for a replacement. When it was time for the top panel, the process would be the same as the right wall, with the additional task of making a hole for the shower head. We started by taking our vertical measurements in 3 places and also measurements for the shower head arm. And unfortunately, I did run out of footage space during this process. But we just used the same methods as before, drilling pilot holes and boring them out with the Dremel drum sanding bit. We took extra care to make sure the top panel sat against the ceiling snugly. The next thing you have to do is silicone all of your edges and around the shower pan base. For this, I used 3M painter's tape to mask off all the lines for the silicone. I also used the powered caulking gun and a set of caulking silicone tools from Amazon. I laid down the bead of silicone pretty thick, and then I used one of the silicone profiling tools to shape and wipe away excess silicone. Then I made sure to take off the tape right away before the silicone started to dry. I think the end result came out really well. And that's pretty much the entire process. We are very happy with our new shower. And the Jetcoat Reflections shower walls were exactly what we were looking for. This really was the only product we could find that went all the way to the ceiling. It also had the kind of look that we wanted and was within our price range. One cool thing about Jetcoat compared to other similar products is that they almost feel like real tile. They're cool to the touch, and they have a texture on them that makes them feel more real than a lot of other shower panel products on the market. Flexstone shower walls look okay if you like that kind of style, but they don't feel like real stone like the Jetcoat panels do. Another thing I like about Jetcoat is that you really can't tell where one panel ends and another begins. They did a really good job of designing the grout lines with the tongue and groove system. And the panels are easy to clean as well. I hope this video has been helpful for you if you're considering the Jetcoat Reflections or other Jetcoat shower wall products. We look forward to remodeling the rest of our bathroom so that it looks as good as our shower does. I'll put some links in the description for other products and tools we used in the project. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.